So there's a few different ways that the Fed can try to impact our economy. So one is the open market operations, and that is when the Fed buys or sells on the federal funds market. Okay, so the federal funds market is where banks borrow funds to meet reserve requirements or to make a little interest overnight on their excess reserves. So the federal funds is one bank borrowing money from another bank. Okay, and again, that's because either one, they can't meet the required reserves or they want to make a little bit of interest. So the Fed can change that rate of interest, the federal funds rate, through open market operations. Okay, and some things that could impact the demand for federal funds is one, if banks don't want to lend money to customers. So if you remember back in the Great Recession, a whole bunch of banks failed, and so banks were a little leery to lend money out. So they held on to their excess reserves. They didn't want to lend them out because they were leery because so many people were not paying back loans. Okay. And then another way that the demand for federal funds could be changed is through an increase in people wanting to take more money of theirs out of the bank. So you remember the funds that we deposit, those are liabilities for the bank. Okay, so if we take more of our money out for some reason, then there's going to be an increase in the demand for federal funds. Also, if banks think they can make more money from their loans, then they're going to want to have more funds available, and that would be an increase in the demand for federal funds. So, what that's going to look like in our market. So if we have the federal funds market, we're going to have on the y-axis, that's the up and down one, the federal funds rate, and then on the x-axis, the quantity of reserves available. So the supply of federal funds is basically, we're just going to say is constant. Um, and then the demand for federal funds is going to be downward sloping. So if the federal funds rate is high, we don't want to borrow that money. Just think of it in your own terms. If the interest rate's high, are we going to buy that car? Probably not. But if the interest rate's low, then yeah, we can borrow that money. So the demand for federal funds is a downward sloping curve. So where those two curves intersect is going to end up giving us the federal funds rate. Okay, so in this case, we're going to say it's probably 5.5%. Okay, so to decrease the federal funds rate, the Fed is going to buy those bonds, buy those treasury securities. Okay, when they buy those treasury securities, the quantity of reserves increases in the banking system. So that increases the money supply. The federal funds rate is going to fall. When the federal funds rate falls, remember the federal funds rate is one bank borrowing from another, but that's also going to push other interest rates to fall. Okay, it's not a direct correlation, but they are related. So when the federal funds rate falls, banks reduce the interest rates on other things as well. So when the interest rates go down, then we're going to buy more refrigerators, we're going to buy more cars. So consumption is going to increase, investment is going to increase because we're going to buy new homes and firms are going to invest in new capital. Okay, so that's what that's going to look like in our federal funds market. So when we we buy those securities, that supply that's going to decrease here. So it's actually going to increase the amount of money, but that's going to decrease the interest rate. Okay, so they're increasing the amount of funds out there, so the interest rate goes down, which is about, in this case, 4%. Okay, so if the Fed increases the federal funds rate, that means they're selling those securities, selling those bonds. So then the banking system now has less money available. And so that decreases the money supply. So the federal funds rate is going to go up, and that pushes other interest rates up. So then if the interest rate's higher, we're not going to buy those cars and refrigerators, and firms aren't going to invest in new capital. We're not going to buy new homes. So consumption and investment's going to decrease. Okay, so that's what this is going to look like. So this is actually a decrease in the amount of funds out there. So the federal funds rate will actually increase because this is going up. So that is how the federal funds market is going to impact the federal funds rate and our economy.